Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down a condition that affects millions of women all over the world, Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome, or PCOS. It's a topic that's surrounded by a lot of questions, so our goal today is to give you some really clear answers based on what our source material tells us.
So, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll get into why PCOS is seen as a modern mystery. Then, we'll define what it actually is. After that, we'll cover the most common warning signs to look out for. And finally, we'll talk about the most important part, your next step.
Okay, let's dive right into this first section, because to really get a handle on PCOS, you have to understand the sheer scale of what we're talking about and why it's become such a huge topic in women's health.
Now get this, our source highlights a statistic that is, well, it's pretty staggering. Something that was considered pretty rare back in the 1990s now affects, by some estimates, 1 in every 5 women. That is a massive, massive increase in just a couple of decades.
So that rapid rise just begs the question, right? Why? Why has this condition that was barely even on the radar for our grandmother's generation become so incredibly common today? And the honest answer is, it's still a bit of a mystery. But researchers think it's a really complex mix of genetics, our environment, and modern lifestyle factors all rolled into one.
So, we know it's a really big deal. But what is it exactly? To understand this condition, we first have to get past the complicated-sounding name and really understand what it means. When you boil it all down, PCOS is a hormonal issue. It usually affects women during their reproductive years, so think, from about age 15 to 45. And the name itself actually gives us some pretty big clues as to what's going on inside the body.
This is actually a great way to look at it. Let's just break the name down. Poly simply means many. Cyst refers to these little fluid-filled sacs. And ovarian syndrome, well, that just tells us it's a condition that affects the ovaries. See, when you break it down like that, it's not so intimidating.
Okay, so if we know PCOS is caused by this hormonal imbalance, what does that actually look like? What does it feel like? What are the physical signs that might tell you something is up?
All right, let's dig in. Our source material points out several really common symptoms that can act like warning signs, clues, that maybe it's time to talk to a doctor and investigate a little further.
First up, and this is a huge one for a lot of women, is a major disruption to your menstrual cycle. Because that hormonal imbalance messes with ovulation, periods can get super unpredictable. We're talking delayed by months, being way heavier or lighter than usual, or sometimes just stopping completely.
And that same hormonal mix-up is also the culprit behind another really common sign called hirsutism. This is when you get unwanted, darker, coarser hair growing in places you typically see it on men, like the face, the chin, chest, or thighs.
Here's another really frustrating one that a lot of women deal with. That hormonal disruption can throw your metabolism out of whack, leading to sudden weight gain. And characteristically, this weight often settles right around the abdomen, and it can be incredibly stubborn and hard to lose, even with diet and exercise.
And the clues aren't always just on the inside. Sometimes they show up right on your skin. You might notice these dark, almost velvety-feeling patches of skin, usually in places where the skin folds, like your neck, your armpits, or under the breasts.
And this is so important because it's like an external sign pointing to a deeper internal problem. These patches have a medical name, ethcanthos nigricans, and they're a huge clue for something called insulin resistance. Basically, it means your body cells aren't using the hormone insulin correctly. This is a core feature of PCOS, and it's tied to a lot of the other symptoms.
And yep, you guessed it, those same hormonal swings can also trigger another skin issue, persistent acne. And we're not just talking about an occasional breakout here, but more frequent, stubborn acne that just doesn't want to go away, often on the face and back.
So all this disruption to your cycle, well, it leads to one of the most difficult and heartbreaking parts of PCOS for many women, fertility issues. Because if you're not ovulating regularly, it can be really, really hard to get pregnant. For a lot of women, this struggle is actually how they find out they have the condition in the first place.
But the impact doesn't stop there. Beyond those main physical signs, our source also lists other symptoms that can really affect your quality of life. We're talking about mental health challenges like depression and anxiety, on top of things like constant fatigue and sleep problems. It really can affect your whole well-being.
All right, so we've seen how common this is, and we know the signs to look for. But what now? What do you do with all this information? That's the most important question, right? Let's talk about the path forward.
Look, if there is one thing you take away from all of this today, let it be this. The source material is crystal clear here. If any of this sounds even remotely familiar, the single most important thing you can do is talk to a doctor. An early consultation is absolutely key. And here's the good news. This is the really hopeful part. Getting a PCOS diagnosis is not the end of the story. According to our source, it is a condition that can be effectively managed with the right approach.
So how do you manage it? Well, it's usually a team effort. It involves working with your doctor on a medical treatment plan that's right for you, and combining that with positive, sustainable changes to your lifestyle. The two really work hand in hand to get the best results.
So, we've laid out the facts to help you understand PCOS, what it is, how common it is, and what the signs are. The whole point is that this knowledge is power. It's the foundation for everything else. So, we'll leave you with this final thought. Understanding is the very first step. What's yours going to be?